GEC, nor any division, brigades, camps, or other subsidiaries. Just ours. No, they do not represent the SCV. Jude. Anyway, so Moose is still trapped up in Tennessee. Something about the state police wouldn't let him free. He got a little bit too crazy the other night. Began running around Puckett's yelling, "Don't moose with me! Don't moose with me!" He ended up at Catfish Corner at some point, and he was talking about corn dogs. I don't know, but he's still up in Columbia from this weekend. So pray for Moose. Um, so to fill in, I have Carl.
Well, I'm not filling in the whole show. I just came on to make an announcement.
Well, make your announcement.
Okay. First of all, I want to remind everybody in the AOT that we have the AOT workshop going on this weekend in Foley, Alabama, hosted by the Fort Blakely camp. You'll have some esteemed speakers there, such as Eric Pravetti, Ron and Donnie Kennedy, and then you have me and the maybe less esteemed. Why are our names inverted?
I have no idea.
I'm definitely not Conroe. I could never measure up.
Well, I'm not Carl. And you notice it's actually spelled wrong. It's spelled Bill.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everybody, I'm used to that. Been going. It's been happening all my life. So, but anyway, the AOT workshop's going to be a good time. It's going to be held at the Gift Horse Restaurant. We encourage everybody that can come to come. We're focusing on building relationships outside the organization, within our communities, recruitment, all that. You know, all the things we need to be doing to grow the organization down to the camp level. And the camps are the backbone of the organization. So if they grow, we all grow. So, sort of related to that, we had the GEC meeting this Saturday at Elm Springs, and we talked, among other things, about the museum. We still have a balance that's left on the loan that was taken out a few years ago to initiate construction on the museum. But something came up. I don't remember who brought it up, but it kind of got me to thinking. And going back to 2016, at that time I was chief of heritage operations, and I was there when we voted to begin construction. And I kept hearing museum, and I thought, yeah, I don't know how on board I am about this, because I've been to a lot of museums, and generally what you find is, a bunch of cannonballs, a bunch of swords, a bunch of muskets, and a uniform or two. And when you've seen one, pretty much you've seen them all. I mean, that's a museum. But Chuck Mack spoke up in that meeting and said something that really piqued my interest. And he talked about a timeline outlining Southern history and the Southern contributions to America. And if you take those contributions out of the American story, you don't have America. I mean, think about it. Four of the first 5 presidents. There were 5 presidents out of the founding generation, okay, from Washington to James Monroe, put it that way. Of the first 5, 4 of them were from the South. 6 of the first 8 were Southern. And the two Yankees, which would be John Adams and John Quincy Adams, have the distinction of being the only presidents out of the founding generation and the children of the founding generation who did not get elected to a second term. So what does that tell you? The American populace was intellectually and philosophically geared more towards the Southern view. Okay, so flash forward from there. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Who got the road to independence started? It didn't start in Boston. It started in Massachusetts, in Virginia in 1765, when a little-known backwoodsman by the name of Patrick Henry wrote basically a rejection of the Stamp Act resolves, and that they floated up the Atlantic coast into Massachusetts, and it was Henry's resolves that prompted the people in Massachusetts to begin essentially nullifying the Stamp Act and put us on the road to independence. So that started in Virginia. Then who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Thomas Jefferson. It was edited by others, but he did the bulk of the writing, a Southerner. So I can keep going and going and going and going. Well, our museum is going to tell a lot of these stories. It's not focused entirely just on the years from 1861 to 1865. It's basically articulating the context that brings us to why the South was right to do as they did, why they not only were right, but had the right to depart from the Union in 1861, and why the intentions of the North to conquer us were un-American. And if we don't tell this story, who is going to? Name for me one other entity on the planet that is going to tell our story. We have a monumental opportunity here to project our story for the first time in generations to the entire world. And it's in our museum, and it's in the timeline. And we've got everything in there in this timeline going back to Jamestown, 1607, the first permanent colony of Virginia, going back to that date, working forward through all the things I just mentioned, leading up to the road to American independence. We've got a section on the distinctions between Southern culture and Yankee culture, why the two were at odds with one another, and how that contributed to the war. We've got a section on Reconstruction. Nobody else is telling the story today, and nobody ever will. Simple as that. And so my point is, we are in error to look at our museum as a museum. It's not. It is an educational facility. It is a platform to project what we're all about, what our ancestors contended for, to the entire world. And a lot of the people coming through there today, guess where they're from? A lot of them are from up north. And they're saying to Adam and Eric and various others, I've never heard any of this. So I cannot overstate the importance of this museum. Now, everybody knows we've got a monthly debt that we have to pay on this. And as soon as we can free that up, we can start putting that money towards expanding into other initiatives that continue to further our cause and taking the fight to the enemy and combating some of this ungodly absurdity that's going on against our heritage today. So we've got to pay this off, not because we're in dire financial consequences, but because it will free up the money that we're paying towards the museum to do bigger and better things. Now, I know, and I wrote an article for the upcoming AOT newsletter. I think it's also going to be printed in the Confederate Veteran. And I say in there, I know everybody's going to say, oh, here they come asking us for money again. Look, I get that. None of us have unlimited funds. I understand it. But if we don't fund this, who's going to? We're not taking any government grants. We're not out asking any government entity to pump money into this, because if we do, we lose control. So if we don't fund it, who does? All right. So here's what I wanted to come on and announce tonight. Jimmy Hill, the AOT commander, and I came up with this idea. I've been thinking about it all weekend. I pitched it to him today. He's in full agreement. He and I kicked back and forth. What are we going to ask for? How are we going to do this? And it's very simple. What I'm going to ask and what we're going to challenge the Army to do, the members of the Army, is each camp to raise $25 per member. That's it. $25 per member. If you are a 20-man camp, we want you to go out in the public and raise $500 to donate towards the museum. If you're a 40-man camp, it would be $1,000. Anybody can do this. This is not asking too much. Now, I don't want the camps. I'm not asking the camps to write a check today for $25 per member. There's a method to the madness here. I want you specifically to get out into the public and raise the money. I've been talking about this a long time, and Ron and Donnie Kennedy probably been talking about it longer than I have. But part of the way we win is by taking advantage of the multitudes, the overwhelming percentage of Americans, both North and South, who agree with us that our history is part of American history. They don't want to see the flag come down. They're tired of all this woke garbage that is permeating throughout our education system. And we've got to take advantage of that. We cannot do it by sitting in the camp meeting. We got to go out into the public. We've got to go out and raise money the same way other civic organizations like the Kiwanis Club, like the Rotary Club, those organizations raise thousands of dollars per month by cooking pancakes. Okay, so part of this, it's not just about raising the money. It's about making ourselves accessible and building relationships to our local community. So I don't want you to just sit down and write a $250 check for a 10-man camp. I want your members out in the public, telling the public what we're doing, why we're doing it, who we are, why we're right, and take advantage of this overwhelming majority of people throughout the country who support us and use our message to get them off the couch and to become activists for our cause. If we were to do this in Alabama, I'm just going to use Alabama because I know the roughly the number of members, but you've got 2,000 members in the state of Alabama, in the Alabama division, roughly, give or take a couple hundred, okay? So 2,000 members times 25, I believe, is $50,000. We're not paying it. The public is paying it by contributing to whatever fundraiser we come up with. Okay, so it can be a barbecue sale, it can be a chicken dinner, it can be a turkey shoot, it can be a golf tournament, a fishing tournament. The sky's the limit. Now, what else is it going to do for your camp aside from, in addition to, paying the debt off and putting us in a better position to better stock the museum and better project our message? It's also building camaraderie within your camp. Because when you get together and work on things, you get closer, okay? Not only that, it's a recruitment tool. Any good fundraiser that puts you out in the public and you've got a group of 10, 15, 20, 100 men, however many it are, and however many it is, and we're out in the public and we're upbeat and we're positive and we're happy to be who we are and be doing what we're doing, guess what? Other people say, hey, I need to be a part of this. And I don't like what the woke left is doing. They're attacking my family. Sorry, I was going to let you interject there. But you see my point. Okay, the multitudes are on our side. We've got to harness, their belief in what we're doing. So don't think of it as just writing a check to the museum or to the SCV. It goes beyond that. It's about building relationships. I used to say this all the time, but with relationships come opportunities. You got to network. You got to get out in the general public and network. I mean, we've got allies in every state and every city and every county. We've got allies out there that that don't know who we are. Well, let's change that. So I'll leave it at that. I thought you signaled me a minute ago that you wanted to say something, but
maybe when I was sneezing.
Excuse me?
It may have been when I was sneezing.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, when we talked on the phone earlier today, I agree with this 110%. This is something that's, very easily done. I think I know the number, but I don't know if we're saying the number exactly how much it is per month to get it paid off. I know that if every division did this, how many divisions? I mean, in the Army of Tennessee, we have 9 divisions alone. Now, granted, a couple of those divisions are in Upper Dixie. But I mean, if every division did this, including our smaller ones, and we combined, let's say, 2 of them together, we would have a year's worth of museum very well easily paid off. I know, just like we mentioned about the Alabama division and even my own Mississippi division, that would be essentially 2 months for Mississippi, and possibly even closer to 3 months in Mississippi, as well as Alabama. So suddenly that's half a year. Suddenly we've increased decreased our debt by a substantial amount, and then all of a sudden we can actually do stuff to go buy really cool items like the museum in Texas that's closing down that has these original beautiful battle flags, as well as one of Jeb Stuart's swords, stuff like that of quality provenance. And suddenly, hey, we got that on display at Elm Springs.
Well, I'm looking. I pulled up my calculator here on my phone. One of the few apps I have. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the members in the Army of Tennessee alone are about 15,000. If we raise $25 per member, that's $375,000. That's the second part. The second part of our challenge is we're going to challenge the Army of Trans-Mississippi and the Army of Northern Virginia, the commanders and councilmen in those armies, to promote the same thing in their armies. Okay, so look at it like this. We've got, give or take,
$725,000 of every member.
Yeah,
roughly.
700. Well, assuming 30,000 members, $750,000. If we did this every year for 3 years, we'd have almost the entire debt of the museum or the banknote. Almost would be just a few $1,000s short of being entirely paid off. But I can't stress this enough. It's not all about the money. It's not.
Yeah.
If we do this for 3 years, we've got all of our camps out in the public promoting our cause, promoting our organization for 3 years. What happens if membership numbers double?
Right.
And
triple.
And the camp, the local camp is the key to everything we do. I've been saying this for years. You got 14 members who are sitting on the General Executive Council. 14 members can't go around to every locale and recruit. We can't. We can try to come up with initiatives and ideas, and we can try to support you when you have ideas that need finances and everything. But at the end of the day, recruitment and retention is local. It always has been. It always will be. That's not going to change ever. So if we want to build our numbers, the way that occurs is by building the local camp. And I can give you an example. I don't know exactly what the membership status is, but one camp in my division in Alabama, it's our chaplain in chief, Gary Carlisle, his camp. They're in an extremely rural area, Fort Payne, Alabama, small town, Alabama. And they've got over 120 members the last I checked. How do they do this? Because they're visible in the community. They put a big emphasis on fellowship. You go to their meeting, their average camp meeting will be between 50 and 70 people that show up at a meeting every month. They won't miss it because they enjoy being there. Fellowship and being able to socialize with other like minds and doing it in a way that's positive and fun. That's the key to this. I'm convinced that we could double our numbers within a year if we can just think a little bit outside the box and focus on our local area and building the local camp.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like my camp here in Florence. I mean, we're at roughly 90 members right now, but the camp's all the time doing something. We're all the time, doing something for Wounded Warriors of Mississippi or Camp Rad, which is for muscular dystrophy, or something like that. And we're one of the most active camps in our entire, definitely in our brigade, in our division. We chartered with 7 people, and now we're up to 90.
How long ago was that you chartered?
Chartered. Let me think. I gotta do math really quickly. 2, 4, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. And you're not in a giant town.
No, and we've got 2 other camps in our county that are pulling from potential membership as well.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it is doable. It's so doable, I've seen it with my own eyes so many times. I mean, I could sit here all night and talk about examples of what good camps, what large camps are doing, what small, struggling camps are doing. And among the struggling camps, you're going to see commonalities. And guess what? Among the larger thriving camps, you're going to see a different set of commonalities that are about the opposite of what the struggling camps are doing. It's not magic. I mean, it's not. It's about having a positive message about who we are, what we believe, what we do, and going out and selling that to the general public and giving them a reason to want to show up. Simple as that. I came down and spoke to your camp. When was that, Connor?
September.
Yeah, September. Yeah, that's right. September of last year. I was overwhelmed, man. Y'all about filled up the entire restaurant, and
yeah,
everybody there. I mean, it was a fun time. I can see why everybody enjoyed coming. And you had it wasn't just members; it was members and their wives. Members, in some cases, I think, and their grandchildren. Coming to things like this. If Jimmy Hill said a long time ago, and I steal this from him because he's 100% right. But when you are trying to attract members to the organization, you've got to give them a reason to come to it. Okay, why do I want to show up at this meeting? Why do I want to be among these people every month? And at the heart of accomplishing that is in your camp meeting. If your camp meeting is well organized, well orchestrated, it's fun, educational, and entertainment, they will come. And at the end of the day, you are competing for their time. They've got other things they can be doing. They can be watching Monday Night Football, Dancing with the Stars, or who knows
frog stomping.
Frog stomping. There you go. They can be doing any number of things. So you've got to think of your camp meeting as competition with the outside world's entertainment choices. What do I present to that guy, that family, to get them to my camp meeting? And once they get there, if you are persistent and consistent in doing things that are, like I said, educational, informative, and entertaining, they'll want to keep coming back, and that's where you're going to see growth. Simple as that. And if the camp grows, guess what? The SCV grows. If the SCV grows, our financial resources grow. And if our financial resources grow, then so does our message out to the world. So do the opportunities for us to expand our message to the general public. And all of that ties into one thing. This is the key to beating the woke agenda. It is. It's the key to it. Simple as that.
Yeah, and there's a one very underutilized thing that we do have here in the SCV, and this on a national scale. When you're out there recruiting and you've got somebody who's really on fire for the cause, but doesn't have the lineage, put them in the friends.
Friends,
Put
absolutely. Yeah, and there may be, I can remember a guy back 15, 16 years ago that was, we didn't have friends of the SCV at that time, but my camp had started an associate member program. They paid $10 a year or whatever, and that made them an associate member. Well, we had a guy that they just could not find an ancestor for him. He became an associate member. This guy was one of our most regular camp or meeting attendees. He was there every meeting. And 3 years later, they found an ancestor and he became a full member. So, you got somebody whose lineage is hard to trace. Well, sign them up as a friend and keep digging until you find their ancestor.
Yeah, and friends are not just open to men too.
That's right.
It is open to everybody. Like Chuck McMichael says, ladies can be friends too.
Absolutely.
And I don't remember. Did Friends get a magazine?
You know what? I think so, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
Somebody more smarter than us, tell us if they get a magazine.
There you go.
But definitely,
that's going to elicit 200 responses because everybody's out there smarter than us.
So everybody's replying it yes now. Okay, we get it. Friends get magazines.
And Jason, Paul, and Ron are all smarter than us. That was a de facto admission.
And Walter.
We already knew Donnie was smarter than us. Everybody knew that.
Here's the really scary one.
Harrison is he's just echoing all the actual smart people who replied before he did.
Okay.
We
it is
get
well established. Harrison, mark it down. 36 minutes and 57 seconds in, we've established, yes, friends get the magazine. Speaking of the magazine, I got mine in today.
Good deal.
I
don't think I've gotten mine.
Which is kind of what I'm talking about tonight. I was reading my magazine because while yes, you should get a magazine if you're a friend, but if you're even a member, you need to read your magazine. No, David, I have not read the book reviews yet. I got in last night from Columbia at around 7 o'clock. I went to Sonic. I got supper for mother and myself, and I went to bed because that drive is a killer. But some of the things I did skim through with the Commander-in-Chief's article, Jason, good article for what I was able to skim through. Have not touched the Kennedy twins' article yet. Like most people, I go ahead and go through and go and see the pictures, but then right behind the pictures is the very important, if I can find it, the notices from around the Confederation. And I just want to remind everybody of a couple of things that are coming up. One, we have reached the deadline for constitutional amendments. So just make sure that check out the next issue for the constitutional amendments we'll be voting on for this year. I think Chuck Mack gave a report on them at the GEC meeting, but I had to go before I could hear that. Remember, guys, if you are a division commander or an army commander, or if you have to submit a report That would be all division commanders, chairman of national committees, army commanders, chief of heritage operations, adjutant in chief, chief of staff, chaplain in chief, historian in chief, forest, lieutenant commander in chief, and commander in chief. Reports need to be submitted in a Word document, if at all possible, without any letterhead photos or embedded images. They are generally due by April 1st. However, if there's a reason a report should be submitted after April 1st, such as the division commander wants to include a report on their division reunion, they should be submitted no later than June 1st to editor-in-chief Frank Powell at fbpowell@bellsouth.net and chief of staff Daryl Maples. Their emails can be found on page 50 of the Veteran. Guys, a couple weeks ago, we talked about getting General Earl Van Dorn's sword. We are no longer decided not to pursue the sword. So read that portion in there. Adam's got a nice little thing in there. We're still, like we're talking about, needing donations, so make sure you make the donations at all possible. There's some changes to the annual awards. I'm not going to read all of those, but just read over that on page 51. This one is very important. Headquarters needs more email addresses. Eric Pravetti mentioned that we're missing about a third of our membership's emails this past Saturday. If you have an email and are not signed up for the Telegraph, or if you have changed email, or if you've changed any type of information about moving, make sure to submit that to headquarters as well as to your camp adjutant. If you don't have an email on file, or if you don't know if you have your email on file, you can email membership@scv.org. It will help you get on the Telegraph, and it's allows the ability for us to communicate better with our membership that way. Again, membership@scv.org. There's a new system for contacting U.S. Congress members. Go to the page 51 and look at that URL. Guys, we've got a bunch of stuff coming up with on the national front, especially the Arlington Cemetery or Monument, as well as other things dealing with the federal government. It'll make it easier for you to contact your congressman that way. And then dispatches from the front, books in print. South Carolina Monument. I'm trying to get to. There was one I have flagged over here from what I've read. Remember, guys, that the Confederate Legion, you need to join the Confederate Legion with the Kennedy twins. You can do that. I'm going to ask them if they wouldn't mind putting their information in the chat, your email addresses. Of course, visit makedixiegreatagain.org. The Confederate Legion is not limited to SCV members. 90% of CL donations will be used for direct public pro-South advertising, like what they have coming in the Epoch Times in April. Forgot that date. And then finally, there's a nice little bit of information about the Forest's Last Ride fundraiser. Trying to find that graphic. Where Wilson made the veteran this time, which is weird. He's your second least favorite president, right, Carl?
Who's that?
Woodrow Wilson.
No, I mean, it depends on what day you catch me on. Between him and FDR,
That's what I figured.
I'm not a fan of Truman, Johnson, Kennedy. Kennedy was he was a lot better than the rest of them. I'm not a fan of any of them other than Cal Coolidge, Grover Cleveland, Franklin Pierce, John Tyler, and Thomas Jefferson, and George Washington. The rest of them I didn't,
Guys, page 47, Forest Last Ride, details the information as well as the Commander in Chief's article about the reconstruction or reassembling, rather. I hate using that term, reconstruction, of General Forest's plaza. Currently, $76,000 was left over, I believe, from the reinterment fund. We need $150,000 in order to get the equestrian statue back up and have a big hootenanny. That's also a very laudable project. And then there was something else that I just saw, but of course, read your veteran. I'm not going to read it to you. Yeah, read your veteran. That's it. Because I can't find what I was looking for.
That's your message of the evening.
Read your veteran.
Read your veteran.
Everybody should read your veteran. If you don't have a veteran, sign up for the SCV or the Friends of the SCV, because evidently, Friends of the SCV get a copy of the veteran.
Are you 100% certain on that?
I'm not going to ask the chat again.
We know who the fastest typers are because you know they were all replying at once.
Yeah.
I think Paul and Ron, if we were having a typing race, I think Paul and Ron won.
Yeah, I mean, they hit enter at the same time.
Moose,
no,
Flo.
Harrison, I do not want an egg.
Well, if you do want an egg, you know where to get one.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I hope they took them down there to the coast with them.
They did. They walked out of the car with them. Nobody knows what we're talking about. So yeah, but
well, he does.
Right. Well, have you got the show from here on out? Because my son has informed me that he's starving. Both of them went to work out tonight, and so they're both coming home hungry.
You better go and cook, Carl, because if not, all the Fritos and cheese dip and cinnamon Pop-Tarts will be gone.
All right. Hey, thanks for letting me pop on here unannounced.
Thank you for popping on.
All right, buddy. Y'all have a good evening.
Holler at you later. All right, guys. So we still got about 14 minutes in before we hit our hour. We're kind of, I'm teetering back and forth from where we are. And we can definitely, when Moose gets back, we can dive into the topic that we're going to talk about tonight into greater detail. But I think I'm going to save the full topic for next week. But can definitely go into kind of the theme that we've had for our first Monday show for the past 3 months. For those of you who've forgotten, our first Monday show, which is stereotypically our history lecture or history discussion that we've had over here on chat, has been detailing the American Revolution, the ideas that the heroes of our heroes. And tonight we were originally scheduled to speak on the Lees of Old Virginia and go into that, but we'll go into that next week. But the reason why we're doing the heroes of our heroes, we're talking about that, is very important because of what we've been talking about with the museum. Southern history goes all the way back to 1607. And for so long, we have allowed our history to be hijacked by the liberal academia and stuff like that. While the American Revolution was something of its own, it was its own thing, but it was greatly influenced by Southerners. By Southerners, there was an entire campaign in the South that ended up to the ultimate defeat in Virginia of George Cornwallis at Yorktown. The founding fathers, of course, you can't mention all of them without hitting a Southerner. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, Richard Henry Lee, Patrick Henry, so on and so forth. But Southerners played a major influence in that revolution, as well as the Texas Revolution, today being the anniversary of the fall of the Alamo, as well as our second American Revolution, the War for Southern Independence. We this past year on 4th of July put out, that the South was right in 1861 because America was right in 1776, and that's what we want everybody to realize. Carl, years ago, when he was chief of heritage operations, I was his deputy chief. We were on the phone one evening, and he said, "How can we have people who are proud to be Confederate if they're not even proud to be Southern?" And that has stuck with me for the past several years. How can we expect somebody who has, as a Southerner, been beaten down by the American academic system, that they've been told that no matter what, their ancestors were treasonous and everything like that? How can we expect them to be proud of that until we embolden them to be proud to be Southern? If you look into it, the Southern accent that has been declining in the waning years, and so on and so forth. There's a whole lot of that goes into looking into that. But that's what we're trying to talk about and make relevant this first half of the season, and also bring eyes to the museum. So what we're going to be talking about next week is the Lees of Old Virginia, Robert E. Lee's family. There's a lot of people who when talking about Robert E. Lee, they forget all the connections that he had to the American Revolution. Not only was he married to Martha Washington's, I can't remember if it was granddaughter or granddaughter, but the fact that he grew up there with the possessions of George Washington all around him, or at least when he was married into the family and moved into Arlington, Washington's possessions all around him. That at some point, George Washington's marquee tent was used by Robert E. Lee on campaign. Stuff like that. But we remember that. But Richard Henry Lee, who was the original proposal of the what would become the resolution to separate from Great Britain, from Virginia, a Southerner, a cousin of Robert E. Lee. It was actually Robert E. Lee's father's first cousin. No, excuse me, Robert E. Lee's grandfather's first cousin, Richard Light Horse Harry Lee's father's first cousin, sorry, which goes into Light Horse Harry Lee. Several others in the Lee family. Thomas Ludwell Lee, who was a member of the Virginia House of Delegates and was an editor of George Mason's Virginia Declaration of Rights, which was a precursor to the United States Declaration of Independence. Francis Lightfoot Lee. Richard Henry Lee, of course, delegate to the Continental Congress and the president of that body, who also was an anti-federalist and everything like that, governor of New Jersey. Or not New Jersey, excuse me. Don't know where that came from, Virginia. So on and so forth. I mean, there's a whole lot of very important people who were from Robert E. Lee's heritage that influenced his life and influenced and as a byproduct still influences us to this day. So join us next week as we talk about that. Moose will be back. The next week, I believe so. Moose, comment if you're going to be back next week. But we're going to talk about that some, as well as some other great things that we've got coming up. Remember, guys, to read your veteran once you get them in. Go ahead and get those out, read them. There's a lot of important information. We try to cover some here on SCV Chat. We try to cover some on Look Around the Confederation. We try to cover some with Commander's Comments, things of that nature. But guys, you need to read your veteran, if anything, for the academic articles that are in there, so that you can load yourself up. We have two forms of ammunition in this Cold War. The Kennedy twins have said one is bullets, but the other is education. Dollars. Dollars are bullets. But education is our bayonet. educate yourself, educate those around you, make sure your camp members are educated, because when you do go out in the public, just like Carl has been talking about this evening, and you're trying to recruit for the SCV and you're trying to spread the good news that it's okay to be Southern and it's really okay to be a Confederate, when you have one of those liberal detractors coming up to you and they begin questioning you on stuff, you can be able to throw their arguments back with actual factual information. That's the way how we win. That's what the museum's here for. We have to be our own walking museums as well. So anyway, sign up for the Telegraph. Remember to tune in Thursday for a look around the Confederation with Moos. Moose should be back for that. Guys, we've got a lot of stuff we can do. We can do it. It's easy to do it. But right now, guys, we're going to call it an episode here. Remember, especially about that challenge for those in the Army of Tennessee as well as every other Army. Remember the $25 a camp member from a fundraiser challenge. Definitely be getting out and getting into that. Oh, I do remember one thing I was going to talk about. Y'all, excuse me while I bend over and get my veteran. Excuse me while I whoop this out. Looking for it. Two things, and they're both off of the same topic. Coming up in July, we have our national reunion. Information on the national reunion can be found on pages 28 and 29 of this Confederate veteran. 128th annual reunion will be held in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Host hotel is the Arlington Resort Hotel and Spa, July 19th through 22nd, 2023. Information such as registration fees, which is $70 through May 1st, $80 after June, or May 31st, excuse me, $80 after June, $100 at the door. The Ancestor Memorial, the luncheons, the everything like that. Information's in there. Information about debutantes. If you have a granddaughter or daughter and would like to get them involved, that's in there, as well as the Confederate Ancestor Memorial. One thing that is very cool that they're doing this year is a muster of all cadets. All young men from the ages of 8 to 11 are asked to join the First Sons of Confederate Veterans Cadet Program muster in Hot Springs, Arkansas. That'll be Friday, July 21st at 1 p.m. It's free to all those who would like to attend, to participate in, especially those of y'all who have grandsons or sons that are in that age bracket and will be there, because the cadet program does work. Case in point, Moose. If you are wanting to register your cadet, you can email bkt1965@hotmail.com. That's on page 13 of this upcoming, or not the upcoming, this current episode, or current volume of the Confederate Veteran. So definitely be looking at that, especially if you have somebody of that age. Remember that Moose will be live from the AOT workshop this weekend. I sadly can't make it. And for those who can both stand it, the Kennedys will be in Foley, Alabama. Hopefully, the Kennedys will, when they're speaking, they will not get on their soapbox. Should have watched last year's live stream. All right, guys, we're going to call it here. Remember to tune in for all the great things that we have coming up on SCV Chat Channel. And in the words of the late and great Harold Philpotts, no Fumar in the elevator and rudder for up.